Perhaps at this very moment you are experiencing something you don't know how to put into words. It's as if the world you once knew has silently crumbled without a clear warning, and suddenly you find yourself walking through strange territory where nothing is familiar, and everything seems to lose its meaning. You wake up, look around, and the things that once gave you direction, your routine, your plans, your dreams, the certainties about who you were and what you wanted, now sound distant, as if they were memories from another life. And no matter how hard you try to cling to them, you realize they no longer fit. They no longer offer the same security. It's like holding water in your hands. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips away. And in the silent turmoil, perhaps an uncomfortable question has arisen. What is happening to me? Am I breaking inside? Has my life lost its meaning forever? This question echoes in the back of your mind, day after day, and its weight seems to drain your strength. You try to distract yourself, dive into work, social media, anything that alleviates the discomfort. But the feeling returns, as if it is always waiting for you the moment the noise around you quiets down. This feeling is suffocating. It's like being trapped in a narrow, dark corridor where the walls are slowly closing in, and every step is taken without knowing if you will find an exit or a dead end. But I need you to listen to me carefully now. No matter how strange it may seem, this crisis is not your ruin. It is not a final collapse, a point of no return. It is, in fact, a birth. It is the moment when, for the first time, you stop living on autopilot and begin to see life without the filters you have always used to endure it. Kierkegaard called this anguish not as a symptom of weakness, but as the first sign of a real awakening. Until yesterday, you may have lived following a script written by other hands, studying, working, building an image, starting a family, accumulating achievements that deep down were never truly yours. And for a time that worked, until one day you began to ask yourself, but what about me? What do I really want? Who am I without all these roles? Existence. The moment when the automatic you begins to die, and the true you begins to be born. And no matter how uncertain this birth may be, it is the only door to a life that is truly worth living. From an early age, you were taught to believe that there was a safe path to follow. Perhaps you were told that life is a logical sequence. Study, get a good job, build a family, have a home, ensure financial stability, be someone in society. These ideas were presented as absolute truths, almost like natural laws, and you learned to measure your worth according to how closely you approached them. For a long time, maybe this worked. There was a kind of comfort in believing that if you did your part, everything would fall into place. It was reassuring to imagine that there was an invisible manual guiding every step, a script already tested and approved by generations. But there comes a moment when these answers begin to fail. It's not something that happens suddenly. It's more like a silent infiltration, a nearly imperceptible crack that spreads through the walls of your certainty. You wake up one day and realize that the stable job that was supposed to bring pride only gives you a dull emptiness. Or that relationship, which seemed like the perfect destiny, no longer brings you the sense of belonging it once promised. Or that faith, which once offered a solid foundation, now leaves you with more questions than answers. The promises that once motivated you no longer hold the same power. What used to be a reason to get out of bed now seems meaningless. It is at this point that Kierkegaard's despair manifests, not as a disease or a character flaw, but as a cruel and inevitable awakening. You begin to see that much of what you lived was not really your choice, but an adaptation to the expectations imposed by family, culture, and society. It's as if you had been playing a character for years without realizing you were acting, and when this realization comes, it strips away any trace of security from you, because it destroys the illusion that the path was laid out. The most painful part is that, even realizing that these ready-made answers no longer work, you still don't know what your own answers would be. You find yourself caught between two worlds, the old, which no longer serves, and the new, which is still unknown. And it, even in moments of apparent tranquility, is not a flaw, it is a sign. Kierkegaard called it the dizziness of freedom. That dizzying moment when you realize that the solid ground beneath your feet no longer exists, that there are no strings holding you, and that everything ahead of you is an open space where any direction is possible. This vertigo is frightening because it reveals that until now, much of what you have lived has been guided by paths already marked by others. And now, for the first time, there is no one left to tell you what to do. Anguish arises when you are torn from the comfort of certainties. It is the discomfort of facing that there is no predetermined meaning, that there is no correct answer waiting for you at the end of a book or in the speech of an authority. It is the raw awareness that, if life has any meaning, it will need to be constructed by you, every day, from your choices and your renunciations. And this is frightening because it requires you to take total control of your existence, not just the beautiful and inspiring parts, but also the dirty, difficult, contradictory parts. This anguish is like an open wound that does not heal with distractions. You may try to drown it in work, in momentary pleasures, in consumption, in new, superficial goals, but deep down it always comes back. Because what it wants is not for you to flee, but for you to listen. It is the internal call for you to stop living as a spectator of your own life and start moving as the protagonist. It is not the problem, it is the alarm. It is the reminder that you have come out of autopilot and are finally looking at the questions that matter, even if you still have no answers. And as contradictory as it may seem, this anguish is a privilege. It means that you are no longer anesthetized, that your gaze has crossed the surface and now sees the cracks in reality. Many never reach this point. They spend their entire lives distracted, too busy to realize that they are not truly living. You, however, have reached the limit, and because of that, you are closer to the beginning of something new than you imagine. But before this new can be born, there is an inevitable process: destruction. There is a moment, in the midst of an existential crisis, when you realize there is no way to build something truly yours without first demolishing what has been imposed, inherited, or accepted without question. It's like trying to build a new house on the unstable foundations of an old one. No matter how beautiful the renovation seems, the structure will give way. In your case, the old structure consists of the beliefs, values, and certainties that were instilled in you before you even had the chance to decide if they made sense. When these structures begin to collapse, the feeling is like being in a weightless space with nothing solid to lean on, floating in a void that seems infinite. And this void is more threatening than any physical pain, because it is not just the absence of answers. It is the absence of a self as you once knew it. The religion that once gave you comfort, but now no longer answers your questions. The career that defined your worth, but now feels like a sophisticated prison. The relationships that sustained your self-esteem, but now sound like invisible chains. Everything you believed to be the foundation of your life begins to reveal itself as fragile walls, painted to look solid but hollow inside. When these walls fall, you find yourself exposed, naked, vulnerable, before a world that seems vast and threatening. The paradox is that this loss, no matter how destructive it seems, is actually a form of liberation. Kierkegaard saw this stage as a process of purification. It is the clearing of the ground, the act of uprooting even the last roots of the illusions that kept you trapped in the paradise of unconsciousness. It is painful because it forces you to abandon the crutches that once gave you security. But it is also liberating because without those crutches, you discover that you can walk on your own. And more than that,
that you can choose where to go. There are no shortcuts here. There is no way to skip this phase, because any attempt to ignore it means rebuilding your life on the same unstable ground that brought you to this crisis. Destruction is a radical invitation for you to take authorship of your existence, even if it means crossing an emotional desert where each step is uncertain and each advance seems too slow. And it is precisely at this point, at the moment when everything familiar has
structure to lean on. But what Kierkegaard reminds us is that no one is coming. There is no external savior, no safe script, no bright sign indicating this is the right way. It is in this deafening silence that the most radical decision of all arises, to take a leap into the dark, without guarantees, not knowing what you will find, simply because remaining still is no longer bearable. This is the leap of faith. And here, it is important to understand that it does not have to be religious. The leap of faith in the existential sense is the courage to live authentically, even when you have no guarantee that your choices will work out. It is to assume that the meaning of your life is not ready, that you will not find it hidden in some old book or in the words of another person. It will be built little by little in the decisions you make, in the values you choose to adopt, in the actions you take, even when no one is watching. Taking this leap is like abandoning the bank of a river and plunging into the water without knowing exactly where you will end up. It is to accept that there is no bridge and that the crossing will be made with your body, mind and soul, facing currents, calm waters, whirlpools, and periods of extreme fatigue. It is to choose to walk in the darkness, trusting that at some point the outlines of your path will begin to appear. And this trust is not blind, it is an act of will. It is to decide that even without certainties, you will live according to what you feel is true for you, and not according to what others expect. The leap of faith requires you to commit to life in a radical way. This means not hiding behind excuses, not blaming fate, not waiting for the world to be fair before acting. It means accepting that each step is your responsibility, and that if you make a mistake, you will learn from it. If you succeed, you will move forward. It is a high-stakes bet, and that is why so few have the courage to make it. Because it requires abandoning not only old illusions, but also the comfortable hope that there is an invisible safety net. And when you take that leap, something changes. It is not that fear disappears, it is still there, but it ceases to be your
opens up before you. It is a raw, wild freedom, almost frightening in its vastness. You can choose. You can decide what to do with your time, with your energy, with your own story. But along with this freedom comes a weight that many are not prepared to carry. Radical responsibility. Until that moment, it was possible to blame circumstances, family, society, God, or chance. You could hide behind the narrative that you were just following orders, merely meeting expectations, just reacting to what life threw at you. But by acknowledging that you are free to create your own path, you also recognize that there are no more excuses. Everything you do or fail to do will be the result of your choices. Life ceases to be something that happens to you and becomes something that happens through you. And this is frightening, because if before failure could be attributed to external forces, now it is also yours. This radical responsibility means looking at every aspect of your life and understanding that you are the sole author. If you are not where you would like to be, there is no one to correct the course in your place. If you want something, it is you who will have to move the pieces. There is no longer the comfort of believing that there is a hidden script that, in the end, everything will be all right. What will go right or wrong depends on how you act, decide, insist, and most importantly, how you remain true to what you believe to be true for yourself. This is why many reject this freedom.
because it is not sweet and romantic as movies suggest. It is rough, uncomfortable, demanding daily discipline and courage. It is waking up every morning and deciding, once again, that you will not abandon yourself, that you will not betray the values you have chosen, that you will not retreat to the illusory comfort of old crutches. Freedom, when lived fully, is not a state of rest. It is a constant exercise of creation and responsibility. But there is a silent reward in this. When you take on this level of responsibility, every small achievement becomes more significant because you know it was born from genuine effort, from a conscious choice. You stop living in the shadow of others' expectations and begin to experience the satisfaction of building something that is truly yours. It doesn't matter if it is small, but the inevitable process of breaking away from an old version of yourself. You are not breaking. You are being reshaped. And this is how freedom arrives, not as a neatly wrapped gift delivered to your door, but as an open and wild field that you now have the courage to cross. Along this path, you went through the pain of watching your old certainties crumble, faced the vertigo of not having a ready-made script, experienced the weight of choosing without guarantees. You saw that freedom is not a tranquil refuge, but a territory where every step is your responsibility. And if you've made it this far, it's because you've already understood that there is no possible return to the previous state. You might even try to deceive yourself, hide behind distractions, pretend you still believe in the old answers. But something inside you has already changed, and that change cannot be undone. This is birth. It is not a smooth, clean, and romantic birth. It is a birth full of blood, sweat, tears, and uncertainty. But it is also the beginning of a life that for the first time can be called yours. A life where you are no longer guided solely by external expectations, but by the values and meanings you choose, build, and live. And that is why, despite all the pain, there is a kind of quiet peace here. The peace of knowing that, even without definitive answers, you are alive in a way you have never been before. Now the choice is yours. You can let this crisis be just a painful memory, something that happened one day and that you prefer to forget. Or you can use it as the foundation for a more authentic and meaningful life. And if you choose the second path, know that you don't need to have all the answers today. What matters is to keep walking, keep choosing, keep creating, because that's how meaning is built, step by step, decision by decision, day by day.